Well, E3 is technically starting tomorrow, and it is going to be a big one. Now, of course, the actual E3 that is held by the ESA is nowhere near as relevant as it once was. But the point basically is, over a few days, the month of June equals games. And as this industry starts to recover from the brutality of last year, well, it's time for that missing year to actually hit us like a brick. If you tuned into the Summer Games Fest opening yesterday, you might have felt it. We already opened on one of the strongest notes possible, an actual Elden Ring trailer. Shame it was after a bunch of movie tie-ins and promotions, but hey, Jeff will be Jeff. So, look, we could talk about games here, but there are legitimately too many to get into. For every game that you care about, there would be 20 that you don't care about. So, let's focus on the proper big picture, what we're kind of here for. The storylines, the themes, the feelings that we can take away from E3. Who are the winners? Who are the losers? Are AAA ever going to learn the lesson on hype? Where are the games? Well, as E3 unfolds, this is what you should be looking out for. So, our first story to follow. 2 years of games. After the damage that COVID dealt to production and to release schedules, we're actually in for a unique year. And COVID, it shattered companies' plans to show their work. It slowed their work. Many publishers have been quiet. And that only really means one thing. We are likely due to have loads of announcements. Because it's the sort of thing where, even if work was only slowed down a little bit by COVID, what COVID does do is create uncertainty. And big companies won't want to make big announcements with firm dates when they have loads of uncertainty. So expect lots. Especially from Xbox and Bethesda. The one thing they're very conspicuously missing is exclusives, right? Their game plan has more been Game Pass, it has felt. And while Ratchet & Clank will dominate this week for being a modern masterpiece and only in PS5, and absolutely the thing I want to do after recording this video, Sony has bowed out of proceedings this year, leaving a clear runway for Xbox to pull back the curtain. Now we know they have a stack of games in the works. Everwild, Avowed, Fable, Perfect Dark, which apparently is a quadruple A, whatever that means, Age of Empires 4, and of course Halo Infinite, which should look a bit better, and that's just to name a few. Then we look at Bethesda, bringing Starfield, maybe something from Machine Games, maybe Arcane's heavily rumored vampire game, Omen. A lot. Now they've got a 90-minute show on Sunday, and obviously we're going to see a fair bit of Halo Infinite during that. Likely a bunch of what we've mentioned will be there, and then whatever's in their back pocket. I mean, I'm sure if they wanted to, they could leave a serious impression. But the thing is, they may not even need to in the Microsoft front, because, well, Microsoft now owns Bethesda, and Bethesda are almost definitely bringing with them Starfield. If Todd can get on stage, show off good gameplay, and announce that it will be out on Game Pass in the next 6 to 9 months, then that's all we will hear about for weeks. Overall, 90 minutes sounds like a lot, but with the number of studios that Microsoft has, it actually does not leave them a lot of room. The story to look out for here, then, is of Xbox showing Halo Infinite, but with a massive glow up from last year, and then following that on with a ton of Starfield. And Xbox is not the only one with ammunition. Over the last year, we've been covering loads of acquisitions, loads of hiring sprees. The thing is, we've seen little of it. And for some of that, we won't see much of it for another year or two. Point is, though, investors are spending, right? Games are very much in vogue, and this is the first big chance that they'll all have to show things off. Except that there's probably going to be more games than ever before, because there are so many COVID-delayed games that should already have been out yet, that should be hitting this year. I mean, remember the epic court trial documents? Look at the first quarter games that are redacted. That probably means they're games that haven't launched yet, right? We don't know because it's redacted, but point is, there's a lot of stuff queued up, and this is the first big opportunity to do some reveals, so expect a lot. Let's not get too excited, though. You see, we're awfully quick to overhype things and, well, ruin things for ourselves sometimes in gaming, right? Thankfully, the industry does seem to be learning. And to be honest, I think that, nearly every exec in gaming right now is terrified of releasing a Cyberpunk. And while the obvious answer here is to just release a good game, it's much easier for us, the audience, to temper our expectations. That's, well, there's a very good line you've probably heard at least once, and it's this. Wise men speak because they have something to say. Fools because they have to say something. All of that is to say, sometimes expect silence. Because for games that are further out, I think we're far more likely to get, well, basically, a legion of title reveals, maybe some cinematic trailers, more that than actual gameplay. Now, that should not be a big deal. As we've covered, we should have a lot of catching up to do from 2020, so there will be reveals. That's not the only way expectations are being tempered either. Publishers and developers are now just coming out and straight up telling us what not to expect. Deep Silver were the first here, outright saying not to wait for Dead Island 2, for Metro, for Saints Row, or Time Splitters. Well, maybe that's a bit boring that we won't be anticipating those things, but it does help to keep people focused on what is there, rather than what is not going to be there. Ubisoft then did the same, saying that Heartland, The Division 2, and the Prince of Persia remake, that they are going to be absent. They're actually going even further by making sure to show Far Cry 6 footage on last-gen consoles. Which honestly, to me, doesn't seem like the best idea for marketing, but I think it just goes to show you anything to not be this year's CD Projekt Red. Our next story to pay attention to is that of AA development. And look, it's a nightmare to define AA development compared to AAA. Definitions basically suck and are annoying. But AA, you'll kind of know it when you see it. And while all the eyes are on Xbox and Bethesda, Nintendo and Ubisoft, you should be really watching everyone else's conference. Koch Media already showed off their new premium label, which is called Prime Matter. And with that, they've showed off 12 games. There's 12 games in the way. Seriously. RTS, third-person shooter, first-person shooter, action RPG, and even a turn-based strategy game, and a classic Fallout-style game, whatever that might be. Most of them are 2022, some are this year. So if what you want is a game that is hyper-targeted at what you like, then I think the Embracer Group has probably got you sorted. If Prime Matter doesn't, because of course Embracer Group owns all of these things, so if the Prime Matter label doesn't, maybe Deep Silver will, maybe Gearbox will, maybe Coffee Stain will, maybe Saber Interactive will, or THQ Nordic. That's all Embracer Group. Basically, I think what we call AA development, I think that could be in for a real winner, so look out for the AA's this year. This is a bit more of an awkward one. Hardware, or the lack thereof. Because with the ongoing silicon shortage, both new rumored bits of hardware could get a bit shot in the foot. All the same though, we had to talk about Valve. A recent Steam update turned up references to something called SteamPal, a Steam OS-driven Switch-like PC, as reported by Ars Technica. Now, to add to that, Gaben recently hinted that Valve would be discussing console plans sometime this year. We don't know exactly what console means. Could be console games, could be an actual console. But the thing on top of that is we know that they will be delivering a, quote, message regarding Steam Next Fest during the PC Gaming Show on Monday. So this could, of course, be anything, but the chip shortage has kind of ruined every other hardware manufacturer's plans, so perhaps Valve have had to walk back their own plans. Now, for what it's worth, they originally said a message regarding Steam, but then they changed the wording. That's worth tempering expectations here, but that's not all for hardware because, of course, there is also the Nintendo Switch Pro. And there's not much to talk about here, but obviously the chip shortage will wreck them as hard as anyone else. But even so, if they're promising a Switch Pro that plays Switch games at acceptable frame rates, alongside really any new entry for their first-party IP, well, hey, then it'll be a strong showing. This one might be a little bit out there, but looking at the schedule, there is something that dawned on me. Japan are gearing up for war, right? Most of their publishers have been enjoying serious successes lately. They really have. Monster Hunter, Resident Evil, Devil May Cry, they have all been absolutely exceptional. And now Capcom's almost out of announced games. Now, if their leaked game schedule is anything to go by, they could show up to E3 this year with a terrifying array of announcements. So that is worth being excited over. As for Square Enix, their lineup has reportedly been leaked, and it's also huge. Now, they've been riding high lately on FF7 Remake, FF14, even Nier, so they're going to have some serious momentum as well. And then there's Sega's success. They've been enjoying a great time with Yakuza on Game Pass. There's, of course, Bandai Namco, who have basically already won E3 by showing off Elden Ring last night. So, yeah, expect great things for Japan. They are seriously hitting their stride after a little bit of an iffy decade. So I'm excited for what they've got coming, and I think this E3 could have quite a bit of it. So to wrap things up then, this E3 basically could be bonkers. I mean, come on, we started it with Elden Ring. So that's taken the edge off. I think now everyone can just breathe, relax, and prepare for what could be some of the most insane few days of gaming announcements that we've had in maybe years. Or perhaps the publishers will actually play it safe and it'll be a bit more boring, but hey, either way, we're off to a strong start. I think this will be a fun one to watch, to think about, so let's do that. Stay tuned to the channel. Of course, we will be doing our coverage, having our chats, our analysis of everything that goes on, so there'll be that. Okay, that's it for me. Have a great day. Let me know what you're keeping tabs on as we go into this E3. With that said, I'll see you next time.